It was the first day of my junior year at Ridgewood High, and I felt that familiar knot twisting in my stomach as I made my way through the crowded hallways. The school had that unmistakable smell, a mix of cheap floor cleaner and the faint, lingering odor of teenage sweat, and the lockers slammed shut with sharp echoes that bounced off the walls like distant gunshots. I was 16 years old, skinny with messy brown hair that always seemed to fall into my eyes no matter how much I pushed it back, and I wasn't the kind of kid who liked to stand out. I enjoyed math, playing video games, and mostly just keeping my head down to avoid any trouble. But from the very start of that year, something felt different, like a shadow hanging over everything. My homeroom teacher turned out to be Mr. Harlan, a burly man in his 50s with a mustache that looked awkwardly glued on at an angle and eyes that could pierce right through you with their intensity. He taught history, but he was better known around school as the coach of the wrestling team, the type who shouted at students during physical education classes as if they were recruits in some harsh boot camp. I'd heard whispers and rumors about him before, stories from older kids about how he would single out the ones he saw as weak, claiming it was to toughen them up and prepare them for the real world. I dismissed it all as exaggerated talk at first, figuring teachers like that were just part of the high school experience. But it didn't take long for me to realize that those rumors weren't just idle gossip. When the bell rang to signal the start of class, Mr. Harlan strode into the room with an air of complete ownership, dropping his briefcase onto the desk with a loud thud that made everyone jump a little. He began calling roll in a gruff voice, deliberately twisting names to get a chuckle from the class, which responded with nervous laughter. When he reached my name, Thompson, he paused for a moment, his eyes locking onto me with a knowing glint. He mentioned something about my family situation, specifically how my dad had left the previous year, calling it a tough break in a tone that dripped with false sympathy. The entire room fell silent, and I felt my face heat up with embarrassment. My parents' divorce was still raw. My dad had packed up and moved to Florida with another woman, leaving everything in chaos, and I had no idea how Mr. Harlan even knew about it. I muttered my presence softly, staring down at my desk to avoid meeting anyone's gaze, but he pressed me to speak louder, implying that I might break down emotionally, just like he assumed my father had. That was the initial sting, the first real jab that caught me off guard. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, but I tried to brush it off, telling myself that teachers could be harsh sometimes and that it was probably nothing personal. As the weeks progressed, however, it became clear that this wasn't going to stop. In history class, Mr. Harlan started calling on me for every difficult question, putting me on the spot in front of everyone. He'd ask about specific dates or events, like the Battle of Gettysburg, and even though I knew the answer, July 1st through 3rd, 1863, I'd stumble over my words under his intimidating stare, leading to snickers from the class. He'd mutter words like pathetic, loud enough for all to hear, and tie it back to my family's troubles, suggesting that it explained my supposed inadequacies. At home, I did my best to shake off the growing unease. My mom was pulling double shifts at the local diner to make ends meet, and I didn't want to add to her worries by complaining about school. She'd often encourage me to focus on my studies, ruffling my hair in that affectionate way she had, but inside, the anxiety was building like a storm. I'd lie awake in bed at night, replaying his cutting remarks in my mind, my heart pounding as if I were on the edge of a steep drop. I kept wondering why he had chosen me, what I could have possibly done to draw his attention like this. Then, one crisp day in October, the situation took a darker turn. We had a surprise quiz on the Civil War, and I was doing well. I actually liked history, despite the irony of the class becoming my nightmare. But midway through, Mr. Harlan hovered over my desk, snatching up my paper without warning. He accused me of cheating, whispering it in a way that made the whole class freeze in anticipation. I tried to protest that I hadn't done anything wrong, but he cut me off sharply, assigning me detention and a 0 on the quiz, telling me to see him after school. My stomach plummeted. I knew I was innocent, but arguing seemed pointless against someone like him. After the final bell, the classroom felt eerily empty, with only the steady ticking of the clock breaking the silence and Mr. Harlan's imposing shadow cast across the room as he graded papers with a red pen that seemed to bleed accusations. He ordered me to sit, and I perched on the edge of a chair, my hands clammy with sweat. He explained that I was there because he saw me as weak, referencing my absent father and my mother's struggles, labeling me as nothing special, the kind of kid who breaks under pressure. I reiterated that I hadn't cheated, swearing to it, but he admitted he knew that, yet insisted life wasn't fair and that this would force me to toughen up. He crumpled my quiz paper and threw it away, dismissing me abruptly before he changed his mind about something worse, like contacting my mom. I rushed out of there as fast as I could, fighting back tears that blurred my vision. I ran all the way home, locked myself in my room, and vented my frustration by punching my pillow until my knuckles ached and throbbed. That evening, alone with my thoughts, I searched online for stories about teachers bullying students, scrolling through anonymous forums where other kids shared similar experiences. Some advised reporting it to authorities, while others warned that it rarely helped, as teachers like Mr. Harlan often came out on top. I decided to endure it silently, hoping that if I ignored him long enough, he'd lose interest and move on to someone else. But ignoring it only seemed to fuel his efforts. He intensified his tactics in subtle and not-so-subtle ways. In the hallways, he'd bump into me accidentally, sending my books scattering across the floor, then scold me for being clumsy. Even during wrestling practices that I wasn't part of, he'd shout from the gym doorway, inviting me to join or mocking me for being too afraid. The other students started noticing his fixation on me. Some joined in the laughter to stay in his good graces, like Jake, the star wrestler who seemed to thrive on the coach's approval. Others offered quiet sympathy in passing but kept their distance, afraid of becoming the next target. My grades began to suffer as a result. Concentration became impossible, and my once close friends started drifting away, perceiving me as withdrawn or strange because of my constant paranoia. By November, I was a complete mess, emotionally and physically drained. I began skipping lunch periods to hide out in the library, my heart racing every time the bell signaled it was time for history class. One particularly rainy afternoon, during a lecture on World War II, Mr. Harlan summoned me to the front of the room and instructed me to demonstrate push-ups, framing it as an example of what a real soldier might endure. The class erupted in muffled giggles, and I hesitated, but he threatened attention if I refused. I dropped to the floor, my arms trembling from nerves, managing only a few before collapsing in exhaustion. He dismissed my effort as weak, once again linking it to my family's supposed shortcomings. That moment shattered something inside me. After class, I gathered my courage and headed straight to the principal's office, my pulse thundering in my ears. Principal Reyes was a compassionate woman in her 40s, known for her warm smiles, and she invited me in, closing the door for privacy. I poured out everything: the constant taunts, the false cheating accusation, the humiliating physical demands, and tears flowed freely as I begged her to intervene. She listened intently, her expression grave, and promised to investigate, though she mentioned Mr. Harlan's long tenure and respected status at the school. She encouraged me to stay resilient in the meantime. For a brief moment, I felt a glimmer of hope as I left her office, thinking this might finally end the ordeal. But the very next day, Mr. Harlan pulled me aside before class, informing me that he knew about my complaint. He called it a big mistake, warning that the principal was on his side, even claiming they were close friends outside of work. My world spun with doubt. Was he bluffing, or was there truth to it? The fear intensified, gnawing at me constantly. In the following week, his bullying became more covert and insidious. He'd conveniently forget to grade my assignments, deducting points for fabricated reasons like incomplete work. He'd send emails to my mom about non-existent behavior problems, causing her unnecessary worry and stress. Nights turned into restless battles with nightmares where Mr. Harlan pursued me through endless, twisting school corridors, his laughter echoing mockingly. Thanksgiving break provided a much-needed respite, a temporary escape from the daily torment. But when classes resumed, the harassment picked up right where it left off. I discovered an anonymous note stuffed into my locker, warning me to watch my back and calling me a weakling. It wasn't signed, but I had no doubt who was behind it, or at least who had inspired it. Paranoia gripped me tighter. I started glancing over my shoulder, wondering if Mr. Harlan was monitoring me or if he had enlisted others, like Jake, to do his bidding. One Friday, during a school-wide assembly ironically focused on anti-bullying initiatives, I sat high up in the bleachers, scanning the crowd nervously. Mr. Harlan was up on stage, delivering a speech about the importance of respect and building toughness in young people. The hypocrisy burned in my chest. Afterward, as the students dispersed, he cornered me in the dimly lit gym, reiterating that my complaint to the principal was futile, as she was supposedly suppressing it due to a lack of concrete evidence. It was just my word against his, he said. I demanded to know why he was targeting me so relentlessly, what I had done to deserve it, but he simply stated that he could because he wanted to, and that kids like me needed to learn how the world crushes the soft ones, drawing parallels to my father's departure. I pushed past him and fled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face while staring at my pale reflection in the mirror. In that moment, I decided I'd had enough. I began secretly recording everything on my phone. Every insult, every glare, every interaction that crossed the line. I aimed to gather undeniable evidence, but I wondered how much longer I could hold on before breaking completely. The tension reached its peak during finals week in December, when the pressure of exams compounded my exhaustion from lack of sleep. In history class, Mr. Harlan announced a group project and deliberately paired me with Jake and his wrestling teammates, warning that failure to collaborate would result in failing grades. We met in the library after school, where they mocked me relentlessly, stealing my contributions and echoing Mr. Harlan's derogatory labels. I captured it all on my hidden phone recording, storing it away for later. That night, I compiled the footage. Clips of his taunts, the push-up incident, the threatening note, and more. It amounted to hours of incriminating material. But I hesitated on who to trust with it. Principal Reyes again? What if Mr. Harlan's claims about her loyalty were accurate? I confided in my best friend, Mia, whom I distanced myself from amid the chaos. She was shocked by the details and urged me to escalate it beyond the school, perhaps to the Board of Education. The following day at lunch, I overheard Jake boasting in the cafeteria about how Mr. Harlan had instructed him to tamper with my locker as a way to build my character. It was the confirmation I needed. After school, I confronted Jake, secretly recording the exchange. I pressed him on why Mr. Harlan had given such orders, and after some initial deflection and laughter, he admitted it, revealing that the coach viewed me as weak and my family as flawed. With that admission secured, I felt empowered. On Monday, I returned to Principal Reyes' office, this time with Mia for support, and presented the compiled evidence. As the videos played, her face grew ashen with concern, and she acknowledged the severity, promising to take immediate action by escalating the matter. Mr. Harlan was summoned shortly after. He initially denied all allegations, framing his actions as necessary discipline, but when confronted with the clear audio and video, he fell silent, unable to refute it. The principal placed him on suspension pending a full investigation. It emerged that she hadn't been complicit. In fact, she had been quietly collecting similar complaints from other students over time. Mr. Harlan's reputation as a heroic coach had masked a pattern of abuse for years. The school board hearing that followed was grueling and intense. I testified about my experiences, keeping my voice as steady as possible despite the inner turmoil. Other victims came forward too, a girl he had shamed for her weight, a boy targeted for his speech impediment, adding weight to the case. In the end, Mr. Harlan was dismissed from his position, his teaching license stripped away. Rumor circulated that he relocated out of town, humiliated and defeated. For me, the relief was profound. I could finally breathe without the constant weight on my chest. My grades recovered as my focus returned, and my friendships mended, with people understanding what I'd been through. My mom embraced me tightly when she learned the full story, praising my courage in standing up for myself. Yet, the scars didn't fade instantly. Occasionally, the sound of a slamming locker would still make me flinch, a reminder of the ordeal. Bullying leaves marks that time slowly heals, but I emerged stronger, realizing that silence only empowers the bullies. By speaking out and gathering proof, I had turned the tide. As I looked ahead to my senior year, I walked those familiar halls with a newfound confidence, no longer seeing myself as weak, but as someone who had survived and triumphed.